just watched an incredibly disturbing documentary last night. And at first I thought, I don't know if I should do this recording because it's scary to do a recording that potentially can disturb people. And I don't like to disturb people. I like to motivate them and inspire them. But if you stay with me just for a little bit, I think you'll understand where I'm coming from. This documentary is entitled Making a World War. And it really disturbed me. And I'll explain why. It was very disturbing. It runs for 6 hours, by the way. It's a 6-hour documentary. I have not watched the entire thing, but I watched a good 2 hours over the last few days. And it is really about how the Rothschilds, the family of Rothschilds, the Red Shields, have been, for the last 200 years, fashioning, engineering, creating the world, creating society, creating havoc, really, by manipulating humanity with wars, and there isn't an aspect, there isn't a factor, an element of society that they have not touched. They have touched everything. There is nothing that they have not impacted or affected with an A. They really are insidious and I reckon embody Satanism. They are fully Luciferian. And the more I know them or know of them, the more I realize what horror we're talking about. We're talking about a family that has, they are cold and calculating and just unbelievable. Just unbelievable. Why does this disturb me so much? Well, it disturbs me because it seems like this is, of all the families on earth, of everybody on earth, they seem to have the most amount of money. Their fortunes are in the trillions and trillions of dollars. When you see their estates, their homes, their houses, their palaces and mansions, I should say, it is unbelievable. We're talking about a level of wealth beyond our wildest dreams and imaginations. The reason that this is disturbing is not because I don't wish wealth upon people. I love wealth. I have no problem with wealth. I think wealth is wonderful. It's wonderful when people are doing good things. They're adding value to the lives of millions, billions of people. And the consequent mathematical rendition to themselves is that they receive wealth. This is good. There's nothing wrong with wealth. Wealth is great. Wealth is good. More wealth for the kingdom of God. More wealth for God's people. More wealth for those who love Him, right? Provided, of course, that it doesn't take them away from their mission statement of getting the gospel out to the rest of the world. It's really, really important that we maintain that focus, that mission to save the world, to ensure that the world becomes a place filled with light and not with darkness. Vitally important. I think what is disturbing me, though, is that these people are behind, the Rothschilds, quite literally, are behind the world's most destructive wars, the world's most dehumanizing situations. When you think about the hundreds of millions of people that have died at the hands of the Rothschilds because of their engineered battles and waged wars without diplomatic interventions, and you see, this documentary, it's deep. You really see how evil they have manipulated the world with all of their lies and their deceptions. You get a deep sense of, can this level of evil be allowed to exist in the world and prosper like they are prospering? One of the things that we see from this documentary is their how they got their money. And we see from day one that they were involved with very, very evil, extremely nefarious ways of getting their money. They used a process called fractal lending. It's where it started, which is what they were doing was they had vaults for people's gold. So people used to trade in gold, right? People had gold. Can you believe it? There was a time 200 years ago when people owned gold. People had gold. They had their own reserves of gold. Gold was valuable. And in fact, biblically, we're told, right, that, this is a place where there is gold. This is a place where there was gold. We are told that gold is a good thing because gold is currency. It is valuable. It is not erodable, and it is a very stable means of exchange. Of course, we know from what's happened with banking and fiat currencies and how the world has literally gone to pieces on the basis of printed money, and how money quite literally has very little value. Paper money has very little value, and it's not backed by gold anymore, by gold reserves, right? It's a fiat currency. It's a fake currency. And it was destabilized on purpose by the enemy, and specifically by the Rothschilds. Because what they were doing was they were holding on to people's gold, and they were giving people paper exchange. They were giving them a piece of paper that said that they had the gold in reserve for them. And what people were doing is they were using these bills of exchange between each other as a mode of trade. So they were actually trading with the paper, not with the gold. And the Rothschilds very cleverly figured out that only 10% of these people ever came back to collect their gold anytime soon, right? So yeah, sure, the gold remained there, but they weren't physically moving their gold in and out. And I know this from my own personal experience. When I arrived in Australia, I brought to Australia lots and lots and lots of gold coins. I had ingots, and I had ounces, 1 ounce golden coins. I even had 2, 3, 4 ounce coins and other items of gold. I used to collect gold. I loved gold. I used to love gold. Now, I shouldn't say love gold but I preferred gold more than any other mode of exchange. So gold for me seemed to be very, very strong, very safe and secure, right? Sudden destruction comes upon them when you hear the word peace and security, peace and safety. I'm almost tempted to immediately quote Apostle Paul. What I found is interesting, though, is that I personally, this was leading up to the year 2000 and the Y2K bug. I don't know if you remember how people were panicking about that. And I remember about 11 years leading up to the millennium the millennial bug problem, which never really happened. It didn't actually happen. But people were terrified that computing and computers were going to come to an end and grind to a halt, and the world's economies would crash. And I remember my dad saying to me, and he's a very smart man to this day. He's this incredibly sharp-witted, fast business person, entrepreneur, extraordinary man. And he works internationally. He literally has the most extraordinary lifestyle. I think he's he's got a background in law, psychology, building, development, construction, hotels, through to... He's just an extraordinary man. And one of the things that he said to me, this was, many, many years before Y2K, the millennial bug problem, is he turned around and he said, nothing's going to happen on that day. He said, look, I'll show you. And he showed me on a computer. He literally clocked over his clock on the computer, and, well, nothing happened. And he was right. Nothing happened. But I wasn't sure of that. I kept thinking, well, what does my dad know? And being a much, much younger man at that time, I was very young, not even 20 really, 18, 17. I started to collect gold coins. I thought gold is the way. Gold must be the way. So I started collecting gold, and I realized I could buy gold very cheaply. I think I was paying 1,000 Rand roughly. This was back in 1993 all the way to 1999. I was paying 1,000 Rand for an ounce of gold. And I knew the people at the South African Mint. I think in those days it was Natanya van Niekerk. It was a long time ago. And I knew a lot of people in gold, right? I knew Tom Tweedy and Mark Irvine in De Beers, which was diamond mining. But I also knew Anglo Gold. I knew the guys at Anglo Gold. And I was a very dynamic businessman, constantly buying and selling businesses, and very involved in sales and marketing and production and development and real estate and technologies companies and search. We had one of the first search engine companies. So I was constantly doing projects and meeting lots and lots of people. So I knew people in gold. So I was able to access gold at its bare minimum wholesale price. And I started collecting gold, and I had lots and lots and lots of gold. I transported gold to Australia in my flight suitcase. Like, nobody searched, and I was taking in ingots and, 20, 30, 40 gold coins at a time. That's 40, 50 ounces of gold. And one of the things I would do is I would keep it in my safe deposit box, and I would not go into my safe deposit box at Bankwest on Barrack Street. I would not go there. Once I put gold in there, I never went back to get it. I literally left it in the safe deposit box. I did not go and touch it, ever. I didn't want to touch it because it was too dangerous carrying gold around. So I know what the Rothschilds were up to. They realized that people were not really getting their gold out. They as long as they knew the gold was there, they weren't really touching their gold. And for that reason, they started to print paper, fractal lending. They basically said, well, we're going to print 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and up to 11 times they were going to print money. They were going to print money. Up to 11 times they were going to print these bills of exchange in lieu of the gold, right? So they started making these bills of exchange made available on the streets. They started to make them available all over the place, and people. And what they were doing is, in essence, they had upped their wealth 11 times. They had literally upped their wealth 11 times. And in fact, one of the things that I found really interesting and very, 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 very scary about the whole thing was that they were doing it 6 times. and they realized that they could in fact they said 6.6 times. For whatever reason, that was their mathematics. And I started to realize that their calculation was the 666. And when I discovered that, that just gave me the sign and made me realize that that indeed was part of the nefarious plan of the enemy. Part 2 soon.